hope you guys don't all fall asleep because I just got through eating too. But anyway, before we get started, I don't want to poke anybody, but if you want to have a volunteer to lead the prayer, start us off in prayer, or I'll call somebody. So, all right, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm always big on context, and I read a lot of N.T. Wright, a lot of other scholars and stuff like that. But I'm going to read a little bit of what he says about 1 Corinthians, because our Bible study tonight is in 1 Corinthians, obviously, and the Bible verse is 27 of 1 Corinthians 1. But anyway, we'll get into that here in a second. But let me read a little bit of context about what he says, what was going on in the first century at that time. It says, in this first century, Corinth was a lively seaport in Greece. Not far from Athens, people and cultures of every sort jostled together, just like so many places in today's world. The young church there was as lively as the place itself, with as many questions and problems, as much joy and excitement as any growing church today. Paul's pastoral sensitivity and deep insight come together to make this letter one of his crowning achievements, full of good things for us to ponder and enjoy today. The city of Corinth had been destroyed by the Romans in 146 BC and rebuilt by Julius Caesar in 44 BC as a Roman colony. Since that time, about 100 years before this letter was written, Corinth had prided itself on being a Roman city on Greek soil. It celebrated its Roman style of buildings, its Roman culture, its special links to the capital of the worldwide empire. It also prided itself on its intellectual life. Most of the Christians in Corinth had not been Jews but ordinary pagans. They had been Gentiles believing in various gods and goddesses, but without any idea that the story of the world was going anywhere, or that their own lives might be part of that forward movement. Again and again, Paul wants them to learn this lesson, that they have been caught up into a great movement of the love and power of the one true God, the God of Israel, whose work for the whole world had now been unveiled through the events concerning his Son. That's why Jesus is at the center of the picture of Paul's points. That was the message Paul first brought to Corinth when he founded the church there in mid-century. But Paul hadn't been the only teacher they had seen in the city. Not long after he'd gone, a wonderful speaker, greatly learned in Scripture and able to explain it powerfully, had arrived. His name was Apollos, and he came from Alexandria in Egypt, where there was a strong Jewish community which included a great Jewish philosopher by the name of Philo. Apollos met some of Paul's colleagues in Ephesus and later went to in Ephesus. Paul wrote his letter to the Corinthians from Ephesus while Apollos was probably still in Corinth. In the time since Paul had left Corinth after founding the church, there arose various problems and questions had arisen. So the church sent a delegation consisting of Stephanas, Fortunus, and Achaeus with a letter asking Paul to respond and give his counsel. This he did, and the result is the letter we have is 1 Corinthians 1. People give, to start out this lesson, this is God's strange wisdom. People give themselves away by what they go on talking about, almost to the point of obsession. It doesn't take long in someone's company or even in a phone call before you discover what's really exciting them, or what is at the center of their waking thoughts. If we had any doubts about what Paul was excited about, the first paragraph of 1 Corinthians, one of his most varied and lengthy letters, would soon put us straight. One name keeps coming up over and over again like a motif in an opera. It's good to remind ourselves where Paul's heart lay, because we can easily read the whole letter merely as an argumentative tract, almost bossy sometimes, setting the Corinthians right about this and that as though his only concern was to whip them into shape. It wasn't. His eternal concern here and throughout his life and work was quite simply Jesus. So you've got a Roman city that is founded obviously in a Gentile kind of culture. And as Paul said when he walked through the city, he said, "You guys worship all kinds of gods. You even have an unknown God." And let me tell you about that unknown God. But First Corinthians, the whole chapter, as kind of Mark had pointed out, he starts off, praising them, telling them, "Hey, you guys, you're doing good, but we have some issues and things we need to address." But he starts off by positive, I guess, reinforcement. And then in Mark's lesson, he also brought up brought up it was an article in Newsweek, yeah, about a lot of people, or at least in that article, it wasn't trying to make a point, but it did make a point that the Bible is basically just full of myths and legends. It's not really true or anything that we can believe, and that obviously we disagree with that. But the verse of today, the Bible verse of the week was, "But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. He chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong." And this has ties to references in the Old Testament of Isaiah 55, 7 through 8. The Lord says, "My thoughts are not like yours, your ways are not like mine. Just as the heavens are higher than yours, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts." Why would God want to use foolish things to serve his purpose or to make his point? Because if you go back to what it says but God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. Why would God want to use foolish things to make his purpose or to accomplish his? I don't know who had. One of you two had your hand up. It's like at the same time. Cody, and then Larry. No. Compared to God, yeah, we're all dumb. Larry? Yeah, Larry too? Larry? L2? Now, it's kind of funny because you read the verse, the Bible verse of the week or whatever, and it said God chose the foolish thing. And you think, that's why I'm big on context. This is a city that prides itself on intellectual intelligence. We know everything. Look at where we are. We have all these diverse cultures, and anybody that comes there, they kind of look down on them. Mark, and then Caleb. that's what Paul has always tried to emphasize throughout a lot of his letters. It's about Jesus. It's about living for Him, serving Him. Kale? I mean, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like any society. I mean, if you don't want to be held accountable to anything, you would have to explain it away. So, they'll do anything. I came across this article because when we read, if you read early on in Corinthians, what was pointed out by Mark and both of the lessons is that Paul encourages them, but then he says, okay, I got a letter from some of Chloe's family, some of these people, and they've been writing me and telling me about what's going on here. And he starts addressing the issues. He said, some of you are saying, hey, you're following me, you're following Peter, you're following whoever, and you're putting your loyalties and dividing everybody against everybody. He's like, no. What are you guys doing? He's like, you're not supposed to be doing that. That's not what God is, one body. So how can you divide yourselves up? And I came across this article as I was researching this, 25 silly things. I want to bring a little humor to the class tonight. But after reading some of these, I was like, man, some of these people, the things people argue about and fight about. 25 silly things church members fight over. And this was back in 2015, and this guy, Tom Rayner, had written this article. And I'll just put him up here. He did it as a Twitter survey. And so he put this out there. And man, you can believe the blow up he got from all people, from all denominations, churches, and everything. Everybody just wanted to air their dirty laundry. And they started putting this stuff out there. Anyway, what I thought, he picked 25 of his favorite out of all this huge list. But he put in his parenthetical commentary. It made me think of Chip, because how Chip uses puns. It's actually kind of funny, so I just left it in there because I thought it was pretty funny. So I hope you guys will have the same kind of chuckle I had. It says, argument over appropriate length of the worship pastor's beard. It's like, okay. Fight over whether or not to build a children's playground or use the land for a cemetery. And he goes, I'm dying to know the resolution of this one. A deacon accusing another deacon of sending an anonymous letter and deciding to settle the matter in the parking lot. He goes, the church could have sold tickets to that event and raised a lot of money. Must have been a pretty good boxing match or something. I was like, man, that's crazy. A church dispute over whether or not to install restroom stall dividers in the women's restroom. I mean, usually it's just a stall. So it's like, okay. A church argument to vote decide if a clock in a worship center should be removed. I think it's only a timely argument. A 45-minute heated argument over the type of a filing cabinet to purchase, a black or brown, a 2, 3, 4 drawer. This one's an official cabinet meeting of the church leadership. That's a fight over which picture of Jesus to put in the foyer. And I thought this was funny. I just want to know who took the picture. But, a petition to have all the church staff clean shaven. Actually, I kind of trimmed up tonight because I was like, a dispute over whether the worship leader should have his shoes on during the service. He voted for shoes, shirts, and pants. A big church argument over the discovery that the church budget was off by 10 cents. Someone finally gave a dime to settle the issue, and he has to admit that the issue is 10 times more important than the church missing a penny. A dispute in the church because the Lord's Supper had canned grape juice instead of grape juice. Of course it should be grape juice. It's right there in Hezekiah 4:11. There is no Hezekiah 4:11. It took me for a second to get that one. I was like, man, I started looking for Hezekiah, and I'm like, well, that's just a prophet. It's like, he got me on that one. A
this is business meeting arguments about whether the church should purchase a weed eater or not. It took two business meetings to resolve this. Wow, the fight was really wacky. Arguments over what type of green beans the church should serve. Two different churches reported fights over the type of coffee, and I thought, okay, well, this might be more closer to me. Because in the one churches, they moved from Folgers to stronger Starbucks brand. In the other church, they simply moved to stronger blend. Members left the church. In the latter example, perhaps they started a new church, the Right Blend Fellowship. Major conflict when the youth borrowed a crock pot that had not been used for years. I bet it was a bunch of crocky old adults. All right, I have to throw everybody in there, so. An argument of whether the church should allow deviled eggs at the church meal, only if it's balanced with angel food cake for dessert. An argument over who has the authority to buy postage stamps for the church. The members were licking their wounds over this one. A disagreement over using the term potluck instead of pot blessing. I get it. The concept of luck contradicts the theology of sovereign of God. This issue is very serious. Good luck trying to resolve it. A church member was chastised because she brought vanilla syrup to the coffee server. It looked too much like liquor. An argument in church over who has access to the copy machine. I think a calendar should be made. Every church member has at least 5 minutes to access the copy machine each year, and you can have a business meeting to vote on each 5-minute increment. Some church members left the church because one church member hid the vacuum cleaner from them. It resulted in a major fight and split. Thus, the second Electrolux church was born. I actually had one of those vacuum cleaners. Those are good vacuums. An argument over whether to have gluten-free communion bread or not. I thought gluttony was a sin. A dispute over whether the church should allow people to wear black t-shirts since black is the color of the devil. Are you serious? Isn't it bread? A fight over whether or not to sing happy birthday each week. I've got an idea alternated with doxology. An argument over whether the fake dusty plant should be removed from the podium. Just give them a little water, they should be fine. I mean, but they're silly, and they even admitted that in the paragraph that I put up there. Even people that made these comments are like, they knew they were absurd, but they still, people argued over stuff like that. So what happens when people think they know everything or consider themselves wiser than everyone else? I know that I found humor in it, but I mean, seriously, what happens when, we get to a point where, well, I know more than you, or I think I'm right, or I'm this or that, or whatever. Stop solving the problem? I mean, do we see God or Christ doing that throughout the New Testament? I mean, Christ called people out. He told them whether you're right or wrong or whatever. But I mean, did he, obviously he was wiser than everyone else. But did he make it a point to kind of just put people down? So what do we do with that? And two of the examples in the Bible that I thought of was when Christ was kneeling and they brought this lady caught in sin or sleeping with another man's husband, or wife. I keep saying that. But she was sleeping with another man. Anyway, they wanted to stone her. And what did Christ do? He knelt down and was just quiet. Didn't say anything, didn't do anything, just kind of just waiting. And they get impatient. Let's stone her, just kill her. They were on blood. And he just eventually stands up and said, all right, sure, let's do it. Because I know I can do it because I'm sinless. But whoever else is sinless, all right, let's do it. Well, everybody just walked away. And the other one is the plank, about the plank in your own eye. He said, take out that plank. Because how often do we not self-examine ourselves before we start opening our mouths? We're people. We're human. And we'll get into that here in a little bit. Cody? to me, I think when I come across something that applies directly to me, it's not that I can't address something, but it's like, man, you need to be careful and do it in love because man, you're just as bad as everyone else, and that's what I feel because whenever I'm start criticizing and stuff like that, and it's like, especially when I'm driving, I think to myself, man, I just did that, so shut up, fool. It's like you're getting mad at somebody that just did whatever they did in the parking lot, and you're like, all right, God, I got it, and it's like, all right, another day. Hopefully, I won't do that tomorrow again, but probably will. But it's a struggle because I don't road rage, but I just get irritated sometimes when people do stupid stuff, and it's like, but I'm that person. I do that stupid stuff sometimes. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Peggy, I didn't see you. But even sometimes we snap at our kids, and sometimes we should go back and apologize. Hopefully we do, but they get on your nerves. They get irritate you, you know. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no, it's tough because there's people at work, like I said, the other night in the meeting. It's like there's people at work I don't even like, but I've learned to work with them, and I know there's people that don't like me, but I can have a working relationship with you. I might not go out to eat dinner with you, but at the end of the day, I want to try to be at peace with you. I don't, I'm not trying to out to war with you or put you down or destroy you, but I just personality conflicts or differences. It's like, but you live with it. So anyway, this. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Because Jesus calls us to a higher standard. Yeah. I mean, it's like don't remain in your sin, but but society beats us down though. I mean, you look at society. It's like you know you're a Christian, you're a hypocrite. You sin. Well, yeah, I sin. Thank goodness for Jesus' grace and mercy. I need it. I'm the worst. I'd hate to stand in front of if Jesus was here and looking at us. It wouldn't matter if we had clothes on or not. He sees everything, and it's like he could look right through you and know exactly your thoughts. And it's like to me that's scary. But he also did tell the people though that after that, like the lady that they wanted to stone, he said, "All right, where are your accusers at?" And he said, "They're all gone." He said, "But sin, don't go and sin no more." He said that a lot of times, go and sin no more. And I think one time, correct me if I'm wrong, he told somebody, he said, because if you go and sin, it'll be worse than what it was before. And I can't remember where it's at, but Scripture says, I'm pretty sure I remember that. He told some guy, don't sin. It'll be worse for you. But why does wisdom of God appear foolish to the world? Why do people think we're foolish? just beaten up, torn down, run down, and stuff like that. You still believe in God? It's like, are you a fool? Or, yeah, it comes back to accountability. Yeah, they want to be the God. They definitely don't want to submit to God. Would you agree that we have to face the reality of a sickness before we are willing to seek treatment? You guys get what that's saying? You guys got to realize you're sick before you'll seek treatment. You don't think you're sick? Like, hey, I'm good. I don't need nothing. I mean, Jesus called them whitewashed tombs. John the Baptist said, "You brood of vipers." Who told you? You know, it's Larry. Well, it makes us vulnerable, doesn't it? I mean, if I admit that, hey, I don't have it all together, then you know that might give you one up on me. What is the underlying problem that Paul is addressing, though, in the overall chapter? And Mark touched on it in his lessons in 1 Corinthians. You guys will probably get it. I'm sure you will. Not really a test. Isn't it unity? I mean, he starts out by praising him, but he tells them, hey, what are you guys doing saying you're following Paul, following Peter, following whoever? He said, God's one. And I quote the verse here in chapter or verse 10. It says, brothers and sisters, by the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ, I beg all of you to agree with each other. You should not be divided into different groups. Be completely joined together again with the same kind of thinking and same purpose. Does that mean we all have to agree on everything? We can agree sometimes to disagree, but I mean, obviously, when it's salvation matter, like Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven. If you say nah, it's not, then we got a problem. Yeah, that's 10. 1 Corinthians 1:10. What's that? Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them are pretty cut and dry, though. Yeah. Right. But did Jesus, when people disagreed with him, especially the Pharisees and Sadducees and stuff like that, I mean, did he hate them? No, he allowed them to think what they, like you said, think what they thought. He's like, that's on you. He said, I'm telling you the truth. I love you, but you're wrong. Yeah. it's even based on what you guys, what they grew up with, in the Old Testament. The prophet, the Messiah was supposed to be healing people and, you know, curing diseases and doing all this stuff. Is that what you're seeing? Would you agree or disagree that one of the greatest sicknesses in our churches in America is disunity? Why are we not? I didn't say it was the only one. It's one of them. Look in the mirror. So it is. It is. But why is that? That does it go back to it's like that slogan of Burger King, "I want it my way." A lot of it is. We're so. Huh? Sorry, Larry. Yeah. When you own it and make it yourselves, but then again, where do you draw the line? Because sometimes, because you're passionate about things, you cross over the line and you're beating people over the head. And Christ wasn't beating people over the head. He loved them. What's that? Oh, sorry. Oh. And that's a tough thing because I've gone through counseling and every in any relationship you have to own your piece of the relationship, and nobody likes to be called on the carpet for their failures or lackings of that you're not measuring up. I mean, it's humbling. You don't want to think that you don't measure up, that you're not. Yeah, right. But that's why Christ put in the kind of little stops here and there, saying, "Take out the plank in your own eye." Basically, we should be self-examining ourselves every day, taking up our cross, making sure that hey, before I open my mouth, what am I doing? But even then, a lot of times, people, it's hard to receive. People is when you think of yourself as being not measuring up, it's nobody likes that, and it's a tough pill to swallow. But that's like asking for patience. It's like, man, I'm not asking for that. Forget that. But what does Proverbs say about that? Because even it talks about that. Wounds from somebody that is close, that loves you, is better than lip service from somebody that that doesn't have your best interest at heart. Yeah, yeah. It's so you want that honesty, but it's sure hard pill to swallow. So didn't the early church though in Jerusalem thrive because it was so? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's what I said. When you think you know it all, what happens? You know, and it lends to like the women, the older women training the younger women, and then the older men. Just because you're older doesn't mean you're wise, but hopefully you gain wisdom. I mean, I, you know, anyway, we're not going there. Moving on. So, but didn't the early church in Jerusalem thrive because it was so unified? I mean, read Acts 2:47. It says they were praising God and having favor with all people, and every day the Lord added to them those who were being saved. The phrase "having favor with all people" refers to those on the outside looking at the church on the inside. They saw a selfless and unified church and were thus attracted to it. I mean, we have to examine ourselves. If people driving by or people come in and they see us, what's going on, are they attracted to that? You know? Yeah. You reap what you sow. And eventually, I mean, it comes to light, and God, I mean, he knows how to work, His will into anything to prove that He's is who He is. You're not gonna pull the wool over His eyes. Uh, but so, what are some of the key reasons we're seeing the breakdown of unity in our churches today? And I come back to this guy I read and came across another one of his articles, and he had 14 key reasons it's by Thomas Rayner again. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But I'm just going to throw these up here because I mean, to me, it's like, man, they were really, really pertinent, really relevant to what's going on. It says gossip. Church members talk about one another instead of talking to one another. Paul calls church members who gossip people filled with all unrighteousness in Romans 1:29. Then you got actions cloaked in darkness. This guy, he said he recently heard of a church personnel committee and a few church staff members who worked in darkness to fire a pastor without ever meeting with him first to giving reasons for dismissal. Failure to confront church bullies. Some church members seek power in a church they can't get elsewhere. I've seen this happen in Oklahoma. Our church in a small town split over that. Some guy wanted power and pretty much split. And he even accosted my dad at the time, and my dad's like, no. Pretty much told him no, because he wouldn't give in. Self-serving church members. Some church members insist on getting their way for everything from worship style to order of worship service. Biblical church membership, however, is supposed to be selfless and more concerned about other people. Oops, sorry. You got lack of prayer. Do you agree with that? If you don't pray, I mean, pray together is like you're gonna help, cause fragmentation. We aren't praying together. We aren't talking to God. Fear of confrontation. Nobody likes to confront or have to call somebody on the carpet. But you do your kids, don't you? Or do you just let them do whatever you want? I mean, does anything ever get solved by sticking your head in the sand? So why do we do it? I mean, some of us don't, obviously. But then it comes back to when you do it, we try to do it in love, but then you're criticized or you're beat down. then don't you, how do you balance that verse where it says, don't exasperate your children? Are you always on them for every little thing that they do, where they can't even breathe? They've got to be perfect? Or do you exasperate them to the point where they just want to walk away from God? I mean, where's that fine line? I mean, you have to have balance. Don't you pick and choose your battles? Or do you just fight everything? I mean, because why does God tell us don't exasperate your children? I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not trying to bait you, but I'm just trying to get you to talk. Yeah, yeah. That's why people say they got gray hair, huh? What about adopting the hypercritical spirit of culture? This reality is especially true in blogs and social media. Many pastors are attacked publicly on Twitter and Facebook. And people want to put stuff out there, everything. Low expectations. I thought this was kind of interesting. Many churches have no clear guidelines on what it means to be part of a body of Christ. If you expect little from members, that's exactly what you're going to get. I mean, was it Peter or Paul in one of the latter chapters? I think it was Peter. In one of his deals about, there's going to be wolves that come in among you. I mean, if there's a wolf, call it a wolf. Doesn't mean you're going to, if it's a member, you're going to try to definitely call it out, but you hopefully do it in love and they change. But if they don't, then, you get rid of it. But I thought, when this came up, I thought of, okay, Paul. Paul called out, was it Demetrius? He did me a lot of harm. Or was it that, whoever that guy's name was, the coppersmith or whatever, did him a lot of harm. Be aware of this guy. He called him out. No church discipline. The majority of churches with which I am familiar with, and this is this guy again talking about his deal, have no process for church discipline, or they have a process in place in theory only. So it's only talked, about. It's not, they don't have any concrete, SOP, standard operating procedure of how they're going to deal with it. Churches are known more for what they are against rather than what they're for. So this negativity becomes pervasive in the congregation and destroys the church unity. And really, does it come across in your life that you love people, love God? Fear of losing members. This guy says, I'm familiar with one church plagued by a spirit of divisiveness by one particular member. No members have confronted him because they don't want to lose one of the biggest givers in church. I've seen that happen, especially in Oklahoma. The people that own, have millions of dollars, they love, those donors. I think she just anointed you. Well, but sometimes people later in life come to Christ, don't they? I mean, it's not like just little kids growing up in the church. You get people of all ages coming to Christ. Yep. Failure to be evangelistic was another one for disunity. He says, I've never known a church member who is both evangelistic and divisive. Do you guys agree with that statement? Can you evangelize and be divisive at the same time? Oh, did you have a question? Okay, sorry. Okay. Go ahead. What's the question? What were you talking about, Krista? Sorry. I'm not poking you in the eye. what about that example when Paul was talking about that guy? He said, "Man, you guys are celebrating. This guy's taking his dad's wife. You know, he's with his father's wife, and you guys are like applauding it. Hey, good job, great." He goes, "What are you guys doing?" He said, "Didn't he say, drive him out for a while or whatever, get rid of him? I mean, if he's not going to repent, he shouldn't be hanging out with you guys. I mean, that's basically if you allow him to hang out with you, isn't that condoning it?" Tolerant. But it's not only the church. It's not only people within the church. It's people outside the church. I mean, how do we get labeled? How do we get when we really stand up to sin or whatever, something that's not right? Whether today it's homosexuality or whatever it is, what are we labeled? We're just hate mongers. We just hate people. We don't love God or we love anybody. I mean, we're so intolerant. We're bigots. We're racist. We're whatever it is. I mean, and we cower. Oh yeah, he's doing it. We see it in our society today, don't we? But what we tolerate, and there's a book that I read by Norman L. Geiser and Turek, I think his name is Legislating Morality. We tell people what we agree with or don't agree with by what we allow to get passed as far as laws. You're saying, hey, if you don't say anything, and that's kind of what the predicament we're in today, because a lot of times it's like, nah, it'll blow over. A lot of times, at least that's what a lot of people growing up in the church said, nah, we're not going to get involved in politics. We're not going to do that, But look at where we're at today because we didn't speak up. We didn't vote for what we thought was right or believed in. We just said, it'll blow over. We don't have to worry about it. God will take care of it. But God put us here. Reminds me of that song. He said, God, the guy is singing the song, and I can't remember who it is. He says, God, why don't you fix all this stuff? Why don't you heal all this? He goes, I did. I put you in the world. Yeah, you're the door. You're the love. You're the all these things. You do it. Right. So there's that one. I'll finish that, and I got a few more points to make. Oh man, that clock's wrong. That clock's wrong. But anyway, I thought I had a lot more time. I was like, woo, okay, I'm moving pretty slow, but is it wrong? Or am I reading it wrong? I guess I don't know how to read clock anymore. I just read it digital. I might have to go back to school, elementary school. Power groups. Sometimes bullies in church get allies to form power groups. They may be informal groups, or they could be formal groups like elders, deacons, staff, personnel committees. Then you have the silent and fearful majority. One church member said it's not always good to know the truth. Such a statement is unbiblical and symptomatic of members who let evil exist because they're afraid to confront it. So anyway, those are his 14. Once again, that's just, he's obviously, I thought it was a pretty good article, is what he wrote. So, but what did Paul say in Ephesians 4, 1 through 3 and Philippians 2, 3? I've got him up here. He says, therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling. For you've been called by God, always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults. Because of your love, make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. And then Philippians 2:3 says, don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others better than yourselves. And I have a hard time thinking about that. You always try to be humble, and not put, look down on people, but sometimes, when you don't agree with them, you look down on them. What did Jesus say in John 13:35? Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. Are we proving to the world that we're his disciples? So it's been said that churches are like hospitals, full of wounded and sick people, but in the church the sickness is sin, and the wounds are those we inflict upon ourselves and one another because of sin. Would you agree with this statement? Or disagree? Why or why not? I mean, we're all sick, aren't we? Why do we tear each other apart, devour each other? Just want to, I'm stepping on you to get ahead. If unity is not being achieved, then what might be the culprit? What's ourselves? Selfish? Could it be the lack of forgiveness, though? I mean, no Christian is perfect, right? We already said that. I mean, but like she said, we can't let sin, just because we're imperfect, just say, all right, we're going to tolerate, sorry, you can do whatever you want. No, I know what you're trying to say. I'm reiterating what she's saying, because a lot of people do that. I can't say anything. I sin. I mess up. So who is our standard? It's Jesus, not you, not you, not you. I should be measuring myself to you guys. It's Christ, and when I look at Christ, then I know it's like, man, I've got a long way to go. But it says, when all these imperfect people get together, disagreements, hurt feelings, and misunderstandings are inevitable. Oh, we're messed up. We're messed up, folks. Right, but because we're not yet made perfect, completely whole, is more than likely we're going to mess up, are we not? So in that sense, it's inevitable that you're gonna I'm gonna sin, you're gonna sin, but I mean, because of God's grace, obviously we're covered, and we can. Okay. I don't look at it like that. It's inevitable in the sense it's not hopeless. It's just it it's going to happen. You're going to mess up. Yeah. Sorry, Priscilla. I didn't forget about you. Huh? 1 Corinthians 13 later on. He says, you can do everything. If you ain't got love, it's worthless. So, it doesn't matter how much you do. If you aren't loving, then, what are you doing? Would you agree with the following statements? If our expectations of others are too high, disappointment is inevitable and can cause further feelings of hurt and resentment. Expectations of others are too high, disappointment, we get disappointed. They're not measuring up to what I think they should be. What about, sadly, churches that experience disunity and are in conflict and turmoil are generally filled with people looking to their own needs, their own desires, their own ambitions. Such behavior is characteristic, though, of unbelievers, not those with the mind of Christ. Worldliness, not godliness, is the hallmark of the disunified church. You guys agree with that? But it's all about me. Or like Mark pointed out, it's not about us. So let's consider Peter's words in 1 Peter, and we're almost done. Give me a couple minutes, we'll be done in a second. That says 1 Peter 4, 12 through 17. Somebody wants to read that? I'll let you read it instead of me reading it off the back, Bill. Somebody wants to read it for us. Can you see it? Yeah, I don't care who reads it. Whoever wants to read it. So if you're suffering and you're doing what God wants you to do, Christ said, hey, count it all, it's to your benefit, to God's glory. But if you're doing what's wrong, then, why are you looking around like, oh, what's wrong? It should be. Yeah. So what about 1 Corinthians 3:3? It says, you're still not following the Spirit, you're jealous of each other, and you're always arguing with each other. This shows that you're still following your own selfish desires. You're acting like ordinary people of the world. Yeah. Yeah.
So if that's the case, we said you're acting like ordinary people. All this excess He doesn't expect us to be like humans. He expects us, like Brazil was saying, the expectation you're supposed to be Christian, you're supposed to be supernaturally powered to conquer
Which we tapped into his power. So sorry, Larry, go ahead. And Paul many times pointed out, you're going to know somebody by their fruit, right? It doesn't matter what they say or what comes out of their mouth. They can talk all day long. But you're going to see what kind of fruit that tree's bearing. And if it ain't measuring up to what kind of tree it is, then you know something's wrong. If you're getting oranges from an apple tree, we got a problem. So in closing, what should our response be to one another, or to one another be? Bear with each other and forgive one another as Christ forgave you, Colossians 3:13. Be kind and compassionate to one another, Ephesians 4:32. I mean, they're throughout the whole Bible, but these are just a few. What about love each other deeply, which covers a multitude of sins, followed by an increased commitment to serve one another, based on 4 Peter 4:8 through 11. But that's all I got. So if somebody wants to close this out in prayer, I'm glad you guys came tonight and let me talk to you. So, Anyway, so who wants to close us in prayer? Oh, yes. I don't have a pen. Can somebody write them down? Pam and I? Yeah, this is actually the first time I actually taught a lesson with my wedding ring on. Hey. I was sitting here feeling it. I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Ooh, nice and flat and windy. Okay. No, they do have some good steaks. They've got some really good steak up there, some good beef. I know, I've been up there. I've had some good steaks. How about just for love? Yes, ma'am. Oh, okay. Good. Great. Oh, hang on. I'll let the little kids come in. Oh, sorry. Come on in. We're gonna pray. Come on in with us.
Dear Father, we